Hello, everyone. This is Lauren Steiner, and welcome to The Robust Opposition. My first show is with Eleanor Bravo. She works for Food and Water Watch, and she's their National Pipeline Campaign Manager, and she's based in Albuquerque, New Mexico. How are you tonight, Eleanor?
Just great. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm really happy to have you on because I've been working with Food and Water Watch since 2012 when I first discovered what fracking was. And we're going to be talking about fracking in Chaco Canyon. That's the subject of our program. But first, I'm going to read the rest of your bio. So you work with communities throughout the country that are facing the encroaching dangers that gas pipelines bring. You oversee special projects regarding pipeline issues, and you've got more than 30 years of experience as a social activist and political organizer. And I just found out you managed the top performing field office in the nation during the 2008 presidential campaign for Barack Obama. Wow, the top performing. What office was that?
And it was in Sandoval County, just outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Oh, okay. So you're from New Mexico, are you?
Well, I'm originally from the Philippines. I'm an immigrant, but I have lived in New Mexico for more than 30 years, and I love it very much.
Well, I was there once. I was in Albuquerque, I was in Santa Fe, and it's beautiful country there. So tell me about Chaco Canyon. What makes it such a special place? I understand it's also a World Heritage Site.
Yes, you're right. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a designated night sky area. And what makes it so special is because there is no other place on Earth like it, and it's a mysterious place. It is, the inhabitants were there around 1100 AD. This was a long time ago, and it is the ancestral home of the Native American groups here in the Southwest. But no one is really sure what went on there. It's not apparent that it was the long-term home of these people. It's possible that it was a ceremonial place. But one thing is sure, there was a lot of trade going on there, because from satellite photographs, you can see roads that go all the way down to Mexico. And they did find a lot of seashells there and other artifacts and parrot feathers and things like that. But, you know, the place was kind of vandalized, and they took a lot of the really important artifacts out of the canyon before professionals started to really study the canyon. But it is such a beautiful place. And I was just actually there day before yesterday. I took some co-workers there, and the structures there are amazing in their strategy of how they are placed, and the amazing masonry work that was done there over the many, many years that people lived there. And the structure that is the most amazing is called Pueblo Bonito, and it at one time was the largest single dwelling in North America.
Wow.
So I can't say enough. I love the place. I think you can tell it's so special to us and to people in New Mexico.
So let's talk about the people of Chaco Canyon. There's two tribes there, the Pueblos and the Navajos. Can you talk about them a little bit?
Yes, there are actually others as well. The Zuni and the Hopi all claim Chaco as their ancestral homes, and they have done DNA tests, and they do share DNA. So it's the Pueblo, the Zuni, the Hopi, and the Navajo, and they are all in here in the Rio Grande area are most of the Pueblos, and the Zuni and Hopi are in other parts of the state, and of course the Navajos straddle New Mexico and into Arizona, and they all still continue to do ceremony there. It is their sacred place.
Now, when did they start leasing land? The Bureau of Land Management, which is a division of the Department of the Interior. When did they start leasing land? You don't have to be exact. And how much has already been leased for oil and gas drilling?
Right. I don't know exactly when they started. It's been decades, but I want to explain to you that the land around Chaco, the canyon itself, is checkerboarded. It's public land, private land, Navajo land, and so the land that's being leased is the federal land, and 91% of the greater Chaco region, which is the canyon and the surrounding area, has already been leased for fracking, oil and gas exploration. So we're fighting and holding on desperately to the last 9%, which is going fast. And any corporation that is a legitimate fossil fuel exploration corporation can express interest in parcels, and that's when the BLM will put it up for lease. And some of these lease sales go for as little as $2 an acre, and it's astonishing. So little.
So now, originally, a lot of the tribal members were interested in selling their land, and this was pretty much the same when I was researching Standing Rock. You know, we talked about Obama before. Obama actually went and met with the Standing Rock Sioux tribe in June of 2014, and one of the things that he told them was he was going to be streamlining regulations for energy development, which was referring to the Dakota Access Pipeline. And there was Dave Archibald, you know, leader of the tribe, standing right next to him. And no one said anything about it then, of course, because, you know, it's a kind of a dirty little secret, but the tribes are not monolithic. There are a lot of people in the tribes that want to take the money. Can you talk a little bit about that relative to Chaco Canyon?
Yes, of course. It's a very excellent subject and a difficult subject. Folks should understand that the Native Americans are the poorest people in North America. They are looking for jobs, and they have been convinced, some have been convinced, that oil and gas drilling will bring jobs. And it's true, it brings some jobs, but they're not sustainable. So what is happening here in the checkerboard area around Chaco Canyon is some Navajos have what's called allotments, and they are called allottees. In other words, they don't live on the general reservation of the Navajo Nation. They live on their own parcels, which they then own. So the oil and gas companies come to them and say, look, here's a bunch of money, let us drill on your land. And some of them are doing that. So part of our job is to work with the Navajos who know what the dangers of fracking are and educate the allottees. And so Standing Rock certainly served a lot of interest in educating people. And so it is a little bit easier now, but it is awfully difficult because some of the people who live out there, native and non-native, don't even have running water. So these are really poor people. And when they hear we can have jobs, it's very enticing. But we are making a lot of progress in that respect.
Now, tell me about the impacts, since so much of the land has already been leased. Tell me about the impacts to human health and the environment.
Okay, yes. Now, they have been drilling here in New Mexico for decades, but fracking, as you know, Lauren, became so dangerous when it became slick water fracking, and it became exempt from the Clean Water Act and the Safe Drinking Water Act, thanks to the Halliburton loophole, Bush and Cheney. So we know that fracking is a secret soup of carcinogenic, toluene, benzene, all sorts of things. Each company may have a different arrangement for what they put in, and they are saying we're not telling because it's proprietary. So as you know, and probably many of your listeners know, it's injected at high pressure and goes horizontally into the shale and displaces the gas, and then the gas comes up and then it's collected. A lot is also escapes, and then it is flared. This flaring in itself is extremely toxic and noxious, and that really impacts the air. So we are talking about millions of gallons of this fracking fluid. And so a lot of it comes up, not all of it. And it also brings up naturally occurring fluids, which is deep, deep underground. And all that fluid comes up. And in Oklahoma, they injected into injection wells, and they now have more earthquakes per capita than California has. Here, they injected into injection wells, but the geology here is a little bit different. We have had some earthquakes. But a lot of places, they use that fracking fluid. In California, you know that they use the fracking fluid to water crops, sometimes organic. So we're talking, maybe it could be 3 to 13 million gallons of fracking fluid per well. This is a lot of water, and this is the desert Southwest. We don't have that much water, and they need to start with clean water. So the aquifers here are deep, they are clean, there isn't much water in it. So once you take out those millions of gallons, there's not going to be much left. So what do they do with this fluid? They send it by trucks. This causes dust, and it causes damage to our infrastructure. And so there's increased rates of asthma. And in this fluid, there are a lot of endocrine disruptors. And this causes people to have serious endocrine problems, headaches, rashes. Also, not too long ago, maybe about 6 to 8 months ago, there was a terrible explosion in Counselor, New Mexico, and it was seen all around, and this caused, again, more impact to the people living in the area, which were mostly Navajo. I mean, I could go on and on. It's a bad thing, uses up a lot of water, uses up a lot of resources, and causes fire. And then, you know, the pipelines are then again another subject.
In March, Ryan Zinke, who's the Secretary of the Interior, stopped the lease sales. He announced he was halting the new lease sales. So that must have meant that you guys did some great organizing. Tell us what you did to achieve this effect.
We do an all of the above campaign. So we work grassroots and we work legislatively, and we try to get a lot of press, and we direct our membership and our coalition members to submit comments, and we put a lot of public pressure on people like Zinke. We try to also involve our elected officials, our senators. We got them to write letters. We submitted literally thousands of comments from our own membership and from our coalition members' membership as well. But the reason Zinke said that he postponed was because he wanted to have more conference with the Native Americans, because that is the law, and they are sovereign governments. They are promised government-to-government consultation, and that has not been happening. And so now the tribes have really risen up, and Standing Rock helped this whole subject matter to become more well-known. So the tribes are getting much more active in demanding that they be consulted before anything happens in and around near their land. Some of those parcels that were postponed are now back up for lease, and we are fighting them again.
Okay, so this is why I wanted to do the show, because tomorrow is the deadline for submitting the scoping comments. Can you talk about the difference between the scoping comments and the public comments, and how BLM has made this process a lot more difficult for people to weigh in?
Yes, scoping comments are happening now for a lease sale, which is going to happen in March of 2019. Public comments will happen in January. There are lots of other lease sales going on, but this is the one we're concentrating right now, and we have examined which parcels are the most dangerous ones. So scoping is gathering some technical information, and you have to name the parcel, and you have to convince BLM that there are real scientific reasons why this parcel should not be leased. And so in our coalition, we work with the different law groups, Western Environmental Law Group, Wild Earth Guardian, Sierra Club, and we rely a lot on some of the expertise from some of those other organizations to delineate in lengthy reports on why each of these parcels should not be leased. And then we all sign on to it and we submit those. And then for the January comment period, that's the public comment period. That's the time when we reach out to our membership and your viewers to all over the country, because when we reach out to our membership, we're not just reaching out in New Mexico, we're reaching out to people all over the country. And other parts of the world are very interested in Chaco Canyon. This is the time then people can say, this is a special place. It means so much to us. We don't want all the things that oil and gas bring to it. So scoping is more technical, more scientific, and the public comment period is more personal and more for the public.
So I've been putting up Food and Water Watch's website. I assume that's where people should go if they want to keep abreast of not only what's happening with Chaco Canyon, but also all the other projects that Food and Water Watch is working on. Don't you also have a texting thing, like people can text this thing to be updated? Do you have a special one for Chaco that we could put in?
We do, and we run. They're very quick. They happen fast. We use them, and then we finish them up. So we have a wonderful platform that we use, and I think some other organizations are using it, but we kind of copied the Bernie people. That's how they turn people out in mass, and that's how you can get a lot of people mobilized really quickly. And we would love it if anybody had an hour a week, 2 hours a week, and we would love to be in touch with you, and we could give you an assignment, and you could text people all over the country, show up for this, or make a comment on that, and then we submit it for you. And that's called Relay. And it's not like you're texting on your telephone. You do it on your computer, and we provide you with the list. And it's so fast. You can literally text 500 people within an hour and a half or 2 hours. And then we have canned responses, and then we send people the information they need. It's a wonderful way of getting in touch with people, and it's so effective. And we have something similar for calling people as well. So if I put my email address on the chat, if anybody is interested in that, you can email me, or you can email our regular inbox at act@fwwatch.org and express your interest in being part of our central volunteer teams. We have something, we never turn anyone away. We have some job for everybody, and you really can make a difference.
Now, we were talking about some of the other big green groups, and people who are familiar with me as an activist, or a fractivist, as I like to call myself, remember that back in 2013, I fought Fran Pavley's bill, SB4. It was supposed to be a fracking regulatory bill. But in fact, there were really no regulations that would have had any impact. Nothing about having to be 2,500 feet away from a home, school, or business. Nothing about how thick the well casings had to be. No, it was really a monitoring bill that if you wanted, you can have your groundwater monitored before or after the frack job. A notification bill, like you had to notify people 30 days before the frack job, but you only notified the landlord. So if it was a rental property, there was no surety that they would, notify the renter. And what are you supposed to do? Sell your property in 30 days? And the other thing was disclosure. They could disclose the chemicals that were in fracking fluids, but not the concentrations. And this is where there was an issue between Food and Water Watch and the Sierra Club. The Sierra Club was opposed unless amended. They wanted the concentrations disclosed. And I'm like, I remember arguing with Catherine Phillips, who was the head of the lobby arm of the California Sierra Club, about this. I said, so you're telling me as long as they tell you what they're poisoning you with, you're going to be okay with it? And it really was kind of left up to me to lead this sort of citizen-led fight, because this Fran Pavley, state senator, was considered, I can't tell you how many times people referred to her as the best friend the environment has in Sacramento, because she did the landmark Global Warming Solutions Act, which basically said you had to get greenhouse gases levels down to 1990 levels by 2020. And we did meet that. We exceeded that. But of course, that cap and trade is a financial mechanism that Food and Water Watch doesn't approve of, and I agree. Actually, let's stop here before I talk about the other big green groups, because maybe you can explain why Food and Water Watch doesn't like cap and trade, why they don't like a carbon tax, and what they do like.
We don't like the carbon tax. We have come out heavily against it. What happens is that the costs get transferred to the poor, and it has not worked. They tried it in Canada. It doesn't reduce pollution. What happens is that the wealthy will then end up polluting. So cap and trade has been tried. It's the same as carbon tax, and it sounds good in the beginning, but people have tried it, and it just doesn't work. It just the wealthier, bigger companies just get to spew out more toxins. That's all. It's pretty simple.
The big thing about cap and trade is it allows you to keep polluting at the refineries. In like California, we have Wilmington and Torrance down here in Southern California, and we have Richmond up in Northern California. So you can keep polluting there in these low-income communities of color as long as you buy some rainforest in South America.
Right.
And what happens is they buy that rainforest, and then they evict the native peoples, the indigenous peoples, who are living sustainably on that land, forcing them into the real economy where they make nothing. And the Indigenous Peoples Network, I think they're called, had a statement against this at the last COPA, that climate conference. And so they're very much against this. And there's also a program called RED, which is very similar, that they're against. So I was fighting this fracking regulatory bill back in 2013 that none of the organizations wanted to join onto. They support, because Fran Pavley was considered the environment's best friend in Sacramento, and nobody wanted to cross her because the Sierra Club, Environment California, NRDC, League of Conservation Voters, they all had these other bills that they wanted her to support. So this legislative process is very tricky because you don't want to go against something but that everybody else is looking to as the leader in the environmental movement in the legislature, or risk having your other bills that you're trying to get her to support blackballed. So I don't know if you had that situation in New Mexico, but we had the groups that were sponsoring that were the League of Conservation Voters, the Natural Resources Defense Council, Environmental Working Group, and Clean Water Action. And they said that they wanted to sponsor that so they could have a seat at the table. But in the last week, Jerry Brown was asked by the oil companies to put in these amendments that would have basically, the lawyers for these groups decided it would lead to unregulated fracking for 2 years. And they begged her not to accept the amendments and to withdraw the bill. She didn't do it. They took their names off the bill the night before, and it passed. And then over the next 2 years, when the study was being done, see, that was a big component of the bill, to do a study. Not that we needed to do any more studies to know how bad fracking is. But for the next 2 years, while the study was being done, we found out that DOGGR, the Division of Oil and Geothermal Gas, Division of the Department of Conservation, allowed the oil companies to inject toxic fracking wastewater 2,500 times into drinking water aquifers. And so this was very, very distressing. And here we are, 6 years later, since we started lobbying Jerry Brown. He's on his way out. He never banned fracking because his family has oil and gas interests. His sister sits on the board of Sempra Energy, which owns the Chaco Canyon, which is why they won't shut that down, the largest methane gas leak in history. What is your situation there with your politicians? Your senators, your governor, your legislators?
Well, New Mexico gets 30% of their money for education from the extractive industry. So there's practically no elected official here that really wants to come out for a ban on fracking. And this is challenging. And we have the same challenges that you have working in coalition there in California. Food and Water Watch was the first organization to come out for a ban. It took Sierra Club probably 6 or 7 years. In fact, Sierra Club took money from
Mm.
oil and gas and had to give it back. You remember that?
Yeah.
They finally now have come out for a ban. The Rio Grande chapter here has been really good, but we don't really work with other organizations that want regulation, because we do not feel that fracking can be regulated. If that's what they feel they need to do, then they do it. But we don't have the capacity to work for every little regulation, because we just want it gone. But we do have to be strategic when we work in states like New Mexico and like California, where there's fracking going on. The best time to ban fracking is before it ever starts. But we didn't get to it fast enough here. So, we do work in coalition, but we work with organizations that are more like-minded than we are, that kind of, Food and Water Watch, we dig in our heels and we don't back down. And we want to keep, we're C4 now. We can do election work. We're looking to get good people elected. And that's really our strategy. And we do align ourselves with people who are a little bit more extreme, maybe than some others. We won't give up anything to get a seat at the table. You know that. We will find another way.
Now, Food and Water Watch does a lot of bird dogging. They do a lot of disruptions. I know that I was part of an action with Walker and Alex, who you know very well, our Los Angeles organizers, where we actually disrupted this workshop where Dogger, this division I was telling you about, was teaching companies how they could get around permits, for this waste well injection situation. So we disrupted it. We had great fun. We videotaped the whole thing and then aired it all over social media. But really, I think that Standing Rock shows that we need more drastic measures. The tar sands blockade people that were actually putting their bodies in front of the tractors. Don't you think, especially under the Trump administration, that we really need much more drastic measures than just public comments to a captured agency?
Well, yes. Well, we want to do more of everything. One thing that we're doing more of is lawsuits. We have Food and Water Watch has several lawsuits against Trump, but you're right. We're just holding the line. I want to be honest with you. We aren't making any progress right now, but I am not deterred. And I want people to hear this. Don't be discouraged, because you are not alone and we are not going away. And if we stick together and keep to the program, which is a good strategy. Lauren, you've been with us for a long time. You know that we're very strategic. We choose things that work, the things that we can win. If we stick together and just keep on, we will prevail. There's an election coming up. Look, this is a responsive universe. Things change and things aren't great now, but they will be better. And we have no choice. We have to leave a good legacy to our children and our grandchildren. And that's why I do what I do. And because I was born with the justice gene, so I know things are bad now. People are discouraged, but don't be deterred. We're with you. We're together. And we really know that when we band like this and we get together and organize, we win.
Great. Thank you so much, Eleanor. I really appreciate your being on the show tonight.
Really enjoyed it and enjoyed seeing and meeting everybody. Lauren, thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Great. So, guys, next you will see me on Saturday afternoon. I will be in Los Angeles City Hall covering a very fun fundraiser for the public bank, which we were speaking about earlier. And Abby Martin's going to be there, and also James Adomian. I don't know if you guys know James Adomian, but he is a fantastic impersonator of Bernie Sanders. I encourage you, and I will put it in the comments, to watch his Funny or Die skit, where he tried to prove that Bernie Sanders was not boring. So I will be reporting to you live from City Hall on Saturday afternoon. Next Tuesday, I'm going to be doing a show with a couple of candidates. Sonia Airy, who is running for state assembly in a northern district in California against a Republican, and Sarah Smith. I have to confirm that, but it was tentative that I was going to do Sarah Smith, who's running against a Democrat in the state of Washington for U.S. Congress. So until you next see me, share this show. Follow me on Twitter, Lauren_Steiner. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, Lauren from LA, and keep fighting.